In almost every police department, there's a place where cold homicide cases gather dust. Each box contains unfinished business, evidence, interviews, in its very own murder book. These cases aren't dead, but sleeping. Each one waiting for new leads and a cop to dig out the truth and finally bring a killer to justice. Gainesville, Florida is a young college co-ed's dream. It's warm, it's sunny, no worries, no parents. But in the late 1980s, kids here had to grow up fast when they were targeted for murder.
2 bodies found in one apartment, another body found in an apartment a mile and a half away.
It all began in 1989 with the mysterious disappearance of a college co-ed.
Hillary's only child is missing.
More than 20 years later, police still don't know the whole truth of what happened the day she vanished forever. Fast forward. It's 2013, and retired detective Kevin Allen has spent the last 5 years being Mr. Mom. Now his 18-year-old daughter has gone off to school, and he decides playing house isn't enough. His heart longs to be downtown again. Once a cop, always a cop.
I'd worked homicide for several years, and I'd been out of the biz for a while. I was excited to get back.
His first day back, he's handed a case that will be the toughest he's ever worked.
In the murder book was all the police reports and forensic reports and all the evidence reports, and mostly witness interviews, and there were thousands. It was the biggest, unsolved, highest profile case for the agency.
20-year-old Tiffany Sessions is a junior at the University of Florida. She's a real go-getter, an economics major with dreams of making it big on Wall Street.
Forgot your key?
Yeah.
Recently, she traded dorm life for a quiet off-campus apartment.
She was getting a little more out of the, the party atmosphere versus time to settle down and get some good grades so she could get a job. So I was happy about it. It was a good environment.
Tiffany is a creature of habit. She goes to class, comes home, and heads back out for a little exercise. This Thursday is no exception.
I will be back in like an hour. Have fun. Bye.
Bye.
Tiffany told her roommate that she was going to go for her usual power walk that she took every day. She usually left around 5 o'clock and got home around 6 o'clock.
But 6 o'clock comes and goes, and Tiffany isn't back. By 8, her roommate is seriously worried. When the clock hits 9, she calls the cops.
She went for a run earlier this afternoon and she hasn't come back.
She also puts in a call to Tiffany's parents.
Hello?
Hi, Mrs. Sessions? She said she was gonna go for a power walk and then she was gonna come back in an hour and help me study.
When I got that call, it was like my whole world evaporated.
They said there's nothing they
I'm thinking, this is not my Tiffy. She would not come home unless something was keeping her from coming home.
Tiffany has always been conscientious. She grows up a cherished only child. Her parents divorce when she's a baby. From then on, she lives most of the time with her mom in Massachusetts.
How do you put a ray of sunshine in a description? I mean, every day with her was absolutely wonderful.
Tiffany also spends time with her father during school vacations.
She was a great kid. She was very outgoing. She was a lot of fun. Just kind of an all-American girl.
And now this all-American girl has vanished without a trace. The next morning at first light, the Alachua County Sheriff's Office is already looking for her. Detective Kenny Mack is one of the first on the case.
I went out and searched the area myself, particularly around her apartment complex.
Mack tries to follow in Tiffany's footsteps. He tracks her usual route, starts on a typical neighborhood street, then veers off into a park that pretty quickly turns dead quiet. Lonely. No more cars. No more houses.
It'd be very easy for a person to be abducted from that route. It was very wooded, not very well traveled.
And it's on that wooded path that Mac knows in his gut something terrible has happened to Tiffany. Tiffany's parents are on their way. Her father flies from Miami. Her mother drives from Tampa.
I was looking at every single car that was going in the other direction. I kept thinking, oh, is Tiffy in that car? Is Tiffy in that car? Is Tiffy over there?
I don't think she's a boyfriend right now.
Okay.
Yeah, she's
Have we heard anything?
Hi, Pat.
By late morning, Tiffany's parents are at her apartment.
Okay. Do you have possibly a phone book, a day planner, something that would give us a better lead?
She may have one in her top drawer or nightstand.
Okay, great.
I'll go look.
Okay.
Is this it? Yes.
They started calling everybody in that address book. Did you hear from Tiffany? Do you know anything about where she might be? That kind of thing.
Okay, when was the last time you've seen her? Okay, you haven't seen her since Tuesday. Okay.
When you can establish that the person is actually a missing person and not just wandered off, it's treated as a homicide.
The next step, trying to find anyone who saw Tiffany. Someone on the road. Someone walking through those same woods. Or someone who might have spotted her at the route's midpoint, which is only blocks from the interstate.
Where Tiffany was abducted from is a major thoroughfare, and somebody had to see something.
But this is 1989. Finding that somebody is a whole different ballgame. There's no internet, no Amber Alerts, no Facebook, no Twitter. Even cell phones are rare. The best they can do is flag down motorists and hand out flyers. But even an army of volunteers can only reach so many people.
My job was to get Tiffany's picture out there, and the best way to do that was on TV. I need your help. I need the word to get out on Tiffany.
Potential eyewitnesses come forward, but none of the leads pan out. At the end of the first 24 hours, they're no closer to finding Tiffany.
It started to get dark and it started to get cold. And I was handing flyers out at 9 o'clock at night. And it was a full moon, and I can remember looking up at that full moon and saying, "Okay, Tiff, it's time to come home."
Day 2, the cops widen their search. But for a small county sheriff's office, it's a daunting task.
It was a pretty big search area. It was several miles wide and long. We were looking for anything out of the ordinary that stands out. Articles of clothing, jewelry. You're looking for something that's recently placed there that may have bearing on the case.
That's definitely a start, Governor. That'd be great.
To cover more ground, Pat Sessions throws in everything he's got. As president of one of Florida's biggest land development companies, Pat is used to putting together massive projects. He's also used to getting what he wants, and what he wants is his daughter back.
He ran this like a business. It was like immediately. Not, do you think that remotely someday maybe you guys can maybe give us a helicopter? No, with Pat it's we're coming with helicopters. We're coming with the search team. The governor's going to send the dogs.
By the time he's done, Pat Sessions has organized one of the largest searches in Florida history.
We had about 800 people there. We drove truckloads of equipment up there. We had tents, we had media rooms, we had everything.
For days, they combed the woods for miles in every direction.
I'm going to take out this section. They're going to come in like right here.
They find absolutely nothing.
Generally, in these types of cases, people aren't abducted and kept for long periods of time. The risk is too high for the abductor to keep somebody alive that long.
I was scared, and we just flooded Florida and beyond as far as we could with her picture and the story.
Pat Sessions takes to the airwaves again. this time with the help of celebrities.
I'm John Walsh. I know the pain of having a missing child firsthand. My son Adam was kidnapped and murdered in 1981.
And I'm Dan Marino of the Miami Dolphins, a friend of Tiffany Sessions, and we really need your help.
5 months pass and there's still no sign of Tiffany. To try and drum up new leads, Pat Sessions offers a huge reward, $250,000 for any information called into a tip line.
I really wanted to get a hit, and I wanted to see if somebody turned somebody in. For $250, a lot of people will turn on their best friend.
You know this isn't a good idea, Pat, but you're going to have every nutcase coming out of the woodwork.
I got a lot of flack about it, particularly from the FBI, who was heavily involved in the case at the time. They said to me, we don't want you to do it because everybody's going to think you're rich. They're going to come after you. I'm like, that's never going to happen. I'm surrounded by police every day of my life. I'm in the paper every other day. Nobody's going to bother me. Well, I was wrong.
Hello? Okay. Pat, I think this could be a lead.
Patrick Sessions.
I know where your daughter is.
The callers knew information about Tiffany that was peculiar to Tiffany.
She lives at the Casablanca apartment off 35th.
They knew where she lived. They knew other things. That one got us fired up.
Is she alive?
Yes, she's alive. So get $250,000 in cash and be ready to make the drop. We'll call you at 5 o'clock with the location. If you tell anyone about this call, she's dead.
That's great. They're playing right into our hands.
But the callers don't know the FBI is already on it. They happen to be there when the call comes in. Immediately, plans are made to trace the kidnapper's 5 p.m. call. So they're caught off guard when it comes 3 hours early.
Okay, wait. Pat, it's him. He's called back.
They called at 2 o'clock and said, get in your car now. There was one FBI agent in my office, and he said, you can't go. And I'm like, I gotta go. If I tell them I can't go, they're gonna know why.
Pat Sessions goes rogue.
I had a cell phone, and I figured that what I'd do is call the FBI. The phone rang.
Hello.
And the guy says, if you cut this call, we're going to kill her. So I couldn't call anybody.
She's on this phone. Do not hang up.
Okay, I won't hang up.
Pat rushes to the designated drop-off point 30 miles out of town.
I was supposed to leave the money next to a restaurant. I was just about to do that, and 3 police cars pull into the restaurant.
What the hell are the cops doing here?
I don't know. Maybe they're on break or eating lunch or... I can't control who comes here.
If you tip them off, we'll kill your daughter if you screw with us. What are you reaching for?
Nothing. Some papers flew off the seat.
All right, forget it. We're to change the meeting spot. Head to the abandoned gas station on Interstate 95. We'll meet you there.
Okay.
We will kill your daughter.
But before Pat gets to the gas station, the FBI catches up with the whole kidnapping for money party.
FBI! Away from the base! Where's the girl?
The FBI screaming at these guys. Get on the ground, the whole thing. They had them.
Tiffany? Where is she?
This is Tiffany!
The kidnappers are 2 local crooks looking to cash in. One of them has a brother who went to school with Tiffany, and he got information that made the calls seem legit.
He turned out to be just a monumental con man. He had a rap sheet 30 issues long.
6 months since she disappeared, and there's still no Tiffany.
Cases like this will haunt a detective assigned to it because we want closure for the family. We want closure for ourselves. We want the closure for the public. It's always on the detective's mind, what could I do? What didn't I do? You're always second guessing yourself, thinking you can do a little bit more, and that may have solved it.
Tiffany's case goes cold. "18 months after her vanishing, it's a new school year.
Everybody's buzzing. Football team's doing good, getting ready for the season. The energy in the community was extremely high and positive.
The shock of Tiffany's disappearance has slowly faded. The town seems almost back to its sunny self.
Forecast, plenty of sunshine through today with seasonal temperatures. We should reach our normal high of about...
Go for Sadie.
Sadie Darnell is the public information officer for the Gainesville Police Department.
I'm at home and I got the call that there was a double murder.
Copy that. I'm on my way.
So I responded to the scene.
Where am I going?
It's the third bedroom on the right.
We got 2 female victims. It looks like there's multiple lacerations.
The women are 17-year-old Christina Powell and 18-year-old Sonia Larson, both co-eds from the University of Florida. Both were stabbed to death, but it appears Christina was raped first.
They were viciously attacked and horribly mutilated, and just a horrible scene.
The girl's door jamb has been pried off. 24 hours later, another forced entry and another young woman raped and murdered. Krista Hoyt has been stabbed to death and decapitated. The next day, the unthinkable. 2 more young victims. Athletic 200-pound Manny Tabota looked like he struggled, but lost the fight to the attacker and was completely eviscerated. Then his roommate, co-ed Tracy Pauls, was raped and stabbed to death. In just one bloody weekend, 5 young people have been slaughtered.
Shockwaves, I mean shockwaves went through the community. The fear was palpable. You drove around, every outside security light and night light and porch light was on. It was a ghost town. If you were out, you had somebody with you. It was just a scary, scary time.
The media dubs the killer the Gainesville Ripper. And suddenly this popular college town is infamous throughout the nation.
Law enforcement poured into the area. We had state, we had federal, we had local. We were placed on 12-hour shifts. So it was a pretty much panic mode at the time.
The chief of police and the sheriff called together a task force, and the chief and the sheriff went around the room and said, this is your role, this is your role, this is your role, and we took over the Gainesville Police Department.
We looked at anybody with a criminal record. If you had one of sexual battery or sexual deviancy or aggravated assault or disturbance where violence was involved, we looked at you.
The list is long, but each and every offender they talk to
Yeah, I was out with friends.
has an alibi that sticks.
I was at home with my wife.
Mind if I check with your wife on this?
You can call her and verify.
And just as quickly as the hurricane of death started, it stops. For months, the task force looks for the killer, but it comes up empty. They decide to re-examine every crime that happened in the area around the time of the murders.
Hey, Mike. Yo. Come have a look at this.
They come up with a bank robbery that happened on August 27th, 1990, the 3rd day of the murders. The police never caught the guy, but they did recover the money. Bank tellers had placed an ink bomb in the robber's bag. It detonated, and the robber, with police hot on his trail, ended up ditching the money at his campsite in the nearby woods. Sheriffs confiscated everything left behind, including a tent, a bedroll, a ski mask, a screwdriver, and a cassette player with a tape inside. And wouldn't you know it, it's some kind of diary.
I don't know what people think anymore. All I know is I'm just one man alone in this world. And no matter what anybody thinks about this man, Danny Harold Rowland, I want people to know that this is not the road that I really wanted. But it is the road that is before me now. And I will walk it like a man.
The rambling recording plays like a suicide note. Rolling leaves some advice for his brother.
Kevin, you better get a deadgum deer for me with that bow I got you now. Yeah, just go a couple of times and see if you don't get lucky with it. Aim for the lungs, straight through the rib cage. Either there or the heart, but best thing to do is hit the lungs. It's the best shot.
There are kind words for his mom.
Mom, you're such a precious soul. There ain't a woman on the face of this earth that can cook like you can, sugar. You hear me? You got to be the best cook in the whole wide world. And believe you me, I miss it. But I want you to purpose it in your mind and in your heart and in your soul. Don't blame yourself for anything that's happened. None of it's your fault.
And a parting shot to his dad.
This isn't easy. Nothing's ever been easy for me. Well, I always wanted to make you proud of me, Dad, but somehow or another I always fell short.
The last part of the tape seems to be made at Rolling's campsite in the woods.
Well, I'm in a different place than the last time I recorded. Now I got the sky for a blanket, the earth for a bed, and some rumpled up clothes for a pillow. But it's okay.
And it ends on a chilling note.
Well, I'm going to sign off for a little bit. I got something I got to do. So I don't want you to worry about me, okay? I'll be all right. I'll give it my best shot.
When the police search the name Danny Rolling in their database, they learn he's a career criminal. In fact, he's in jail now for the armed robbery of a supermarket in a nearby county. He was arrested 2 weeks after the Ripper terrorized the town. That would explain why the killing stopped. Police have the screwdriver from Rolling's campsite analyzed. It's a perfect match to the pry marks left at all 3 crime scenes. And when they compare Rolling's DNA to semen found on the female victims, they get a positive match. Police have finally found the Gainesville Ripper. When confronted, Rolling admits he was trying to kill his way to superstardom, just like his idol, Ted Bundy. Now police want to know if his vicious rampage began a year earlier, when Tiffany disappeared.
Tiffany's missing. She's a college student. These people that were killed were students. So we tried to make a connection, but we determined he was in the Shreveport area at the time due to the fact that he had been in contact with his probation parole officer the day Tiffany went missing.
Rolling had nothing to do with Tiffany's case. When he's sentenced to death, the 5 co-ed murder books are officially closed. But Tiffany's is still wide open.
May God have mercy on his soul.
After 3 weeks, cold case detective Kevin Allen is still carefully combing through the 24-year-old murder book of Tiffany Sessions. He looks at it with a cool cop's eye, but with the sinking heart of a parent.
I had an 18-year-old daughter at the time who was in college, and my daughter's very vivacious, very outgoing, and she actually looked similar to Tiffany Sessions, so I took it very personally.
And what Allen sees next makes the hairs stand up on the back of his neck. By 1992, a new class of hopeful undergrads is in Gainesville. Many of them don't even know that Tiffany Sessions disappeared from here in 1989, or that Danny Rolling was sentenced to death after butchering 5 students just last year. One of these newcomers is 21-year-old Beth Foster. She moved from New Jersey to enjoy the Florida weather while she went to school.
She attended Santa Fe Community College here, and she was a bright, beautiful young lady.
Are you gonna be back soon? Yeah, probably about an hour or so. Just gonna go get some fresh air. All right. See you later.
But once again, day turns to night and another happy co-ed, out for some fresh air, doesn't come home. And once again, a roommate must make a terrible call to her good friend's mother.
Hi. Sorry to bother you, Mrs. Foster. I'm getting kind of worried. Have you heard from Beth at all tonight? She hasn't called, and she didn't say she'd be out this late.
It's not like Beth to simply disappear. Beth's parents call the police and get on the next plane to Gainesville. By morning, still no sign of Beth. For Detective Mack, who worked the Tiffany Sessions case, it's déjà vu.
When Beth Foster went missing, immediately I thought of Tiffany Sessions, and we have a monster loose in this town abducting college students. It wasn't good for the town. It wasn't good for my community that I lived in.
Once again, the Alachua County Sheriff organizes search teams to comb the woods around the park.
It was intense, very much like Tiffany's search.
Your location again?
It was expansive. A lot of people were involved.
For 10 days, they scour the area. On day 11, in an isolated part of the woods, near where Tiffany Sessions disappeared, the search ends.
Beth's body was discovered, partially decomposed, in a shallow grave by a park ranger out checking for people dumping trash on the state preserve.
The autopsy reveals that Beth Foster had been sexually assaulted and then beaten to death. The medical examiner retrieves semen from her body. That gives Kenny Mack the killer's DNA.
The DNA material taken from Beth Foster was tested, blood typed, run against known data files at that time.
There are no hits. But this is '92. DNA testing is brand new, and it'll be years before there's a national database of criminals to match the sample to.
It was very frustrating putting the work forth again and still not being able to come up with what happened. That's what we're there for, to find out what happened and who did it. And we're still at that point, we can't determine that.
For the second time, Detective Mack is forced to shelve a murder book. They sit side by side for 5 more years. Then, out of nowhere, a call comes in.
Detective Mack?
We were contacted by authorities in Wisconsin stating they had an individual in custody who had sexually assaulted and beat a University of Wisconsin student, and he was under arrest for that assault and sexual battery.
Oh, okay.
And while he was in custody, he made mention to a cellmate that he had done this to a girl in Florida.
Definitely. What's this guy's name?
The inmate is 28-year-old George Taylor, a contractor originally from Florida.
We placed the suspect in and out of Gainesville during the period of time that Beth Foster went missing.
Cops also locate a neighbor of Beth's who reported seeing a strange delivery man near her apartment the day she disappeared.
Thanks for coming in. Got some pictures for you to have a look at here. Hopefully one of these guys is going to look familiar.
We obtained a photograph from Wisconsin and placed it in a lineup.
That's him.
You sure?
She positively identified the suspect as being the person who she deemed suspicious at the time. When we made the connection, it was almost like a rush. I wished it had been the same with Tiffany Sessions, that we could have tied him to that. Still, Tiffany Sessions is out here missing with no evidence. At least we've got somebody to look at in this one. And now we had something concrete to work with.
They get a sample from Taylor and send it to the lab to see if it matches the killer's semen found on Beth.
He was subsequently charged by a grand jury, and it was a good feeling. You know, we got somebody we're looking at. We're not looking at a broad spectrum of people. We got somebody specific to look at in the case.
But when they try to run them for comparison, they realize the previous DNA testing burned up most of the original killer's sample. They simply don't have enough left to match to Taylor or anyone else.
And the technology just wasn't there. Very frustrating.
Thinking George Taylor is getting away with murder, the Fosters agree to have Beth's body exhumed, hoping to recover more of the killer's DNA. But after 5 years underground, The DNA is so degraded, it's unusable. The case against Taylor is thrown out, and any chance of tying him to Beth Foster and Tiffany Sessions goes with it. Years pass. In 2001, Kenny Mack retires.
I dedicated most of my life to solving crime, and here are two major cases I left on the table. And it's a disappointment to me. You're always second-guessing yourself, thinking, what didn't I do that I could have done?
For years, Gainesville's tragic cases of the two lost co-eds never moves forward, but is never quite forgotten. Then Sadie Darnell, who's been in law enforcement since Tiffany Sessions disappeared, gets elected sheriff. In 2012, she starts a cold case unit.
Having a new set of eyes or a new look at a case can be valuable. And then as time progresses, the technology changes, especially in the area of DNA. So the evidence needs to be reevaluated all the time. And plus we need and have a responsibility to family members to let them know that we haven't forgotten about their loved one.
Can get more information, I'll get it back to you.
Get on it, please.
Sheriff Darnell told me that she was going to start a cold case squad, which would focus on a number of cases, but also particularly on Tiffany's.
And for the first time since Tiffany's disappearance, technology is ready for flushing out the killer.
We had a person in our agency who had a real interest in DNA. So she became our designated DNA specialist. So she went through the murder books to see whether any of the advances in DNA technology could possibly be relevant in the case.
In 1996, a small amount of DNA wasn't enough to test for a match, but 16 years later, science has changed a lot. Now, a microscopic amount is all that's needed to create an accurate profile. So the semen sample in Beth Foster's murder book is run through the new National Criminal Database.
And sure enough, it came back with a DNA match.
The cops are thinking, here we go. We finally have George Taylor, the convicted rapist from Wisconsin who was the #1 suspect in Beth's murder in the 90s. He's not a match. No, George Taylor didn't murder Beth Foster.
I'm gonna go ahead and go through these files here.
Neither did the Gainesville Ripper, who had been executed for the co-ed murders.
We're gonna make this a priority.
Her killer's DNA matches a guy named Paul Rolls. Rolls is an ex-con Gainesville police know all too well. During the manhunt for the Gainesville Ripper, Rolls was one of the suspects brought in for questioning.
What were you doing last Sunday night?
I was at home with my wife.
Mind if I check with your wife on this?
You can call her and verify.
In fact, he sat in a police interview room in 1990, truthfully denying being the Gainesville Ripper.
Am I good to go then?
All right.
Only to kill Beth Foster 2 years later. With the DNA match, they've got enough to close Beth's murder book. But they're pretty sure Rolls is behind Tiffany's disappearance, too. He's easy to find. He's already doing time for kidnapping and raping a 15-year-old girl.
What do you want to know, man?
Two detectives go to talk to him.
They knew and had enough to charge him on the Beth Foster, but because of the possibility he might be connected to Tiffany Sessions, they wanted to go see what he was willing to say.
Tiffany, what do you know? I know you remember her. She was in the park, the pretty girl. I ain't talking.
But Rolls is 64 and in bad health.
We have your DNA on Beth. Now, if you just admit to Tiffany's murder, we can just get out of here.
What do you know about Tiffany? Beth is a done deal.
I don't know who Tiffany is. I don't know about a murder. I don't know anything. I know I'm dying here, and you're not helping.
He yelled at him, and I'm in pain, and leave me alone, and I didn't have anything to do with it, and da-da-da-da.
So get your warrant. Now get out.
I received a report back that, they went, it wasn't very productive, he wasn't very forthcoming, so I was disappointed.
So Sheriff Sadie Darnell hires Detective Allen.
We got a full-time investigator, which made a big difference. It's hard to imagine that after 25 years, we know more today than we ever did. We didn't know a thing for 24 years. A thing. We didn't know anything.
His first job in the cold case unit is to dig up everything he can on Rolls.
My research into Paul Rolls revealed his criminal history started in 1972.
Yeah, I'm ready. Here we go.
Here we go.
First place.
First of many.
Oh, wow.
Rolls is 24 years old and a newlywed. His young bride is training to be a flight attendant, and he's working in a restaurant when they move into their first apartment.
Oh my gosh, what do you think?
I think you're beautiful.
Oh.
On the outside, Rolls is the perfect husband. But on the inside, he's a sick, twisted mess. In 1994, Paul told his life story to a court-appointed psychiatrist. He was raised in Pennsylvania. His mother was in and out of mental institutions. His father drank and hit. When he was 8, Rolls strangled a neighborhood cat. By the time he was 12, he was fantasizing about raping women. In his teens, he graduated to stealing underwear from his friends' mothers. He got a rush from putting them on, then chopping them up and burning them.
Don't do it.
After he gets married, Rolls tries to keep his dark side under control.
Hi. You guys just moved in?
Yeah, we just moved in.
Nice to meet you. I'm Linda.
Paul.
But it's a losing battle.
Well, I'll see you tonight, honey.
Okay, all right.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Rolls fixates on his neighbor, 20-year-old Linda Fida.
All right, well, I'll see you around.
Okay.
Bye.
He learns her habits, like when she's home alone.
After she was dead, he took a knife from the kitchen and stabbed her multiple times in the breast. And then he carried her into her own bathroom and drowned her in her own bathtub.
At the crime scene, investigators find 2 used Band-Aids with toe prints on them. When they canvass the apartment building, Paul Rolls answers his door wearing sandals and fresh Band-Aids on his toes.
And they linked him to the crime scene through a toe print.
Paul Rolls caves as soon as he's confronted. He's convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life. Should be the end of the road for this monster.
Everyone thinks it's crazy.
We're not crazy.
And we'll live the rest of our lives together.
You have no idea how much I wish that.
But this dark Prince Charming works some magic and seduces a prison volunteer.
She was an accountant at the prison. He promised to marry her when he got out of prison. And she did solicit the parole board for his release, promised that she would help find him a job and keep him out of trouble.
After serving just 13 years, this vicious monster is a free man. He marries the girlfriend who helped spring him. And that's when Alan sees a connection no one has before. In 1985, the ex-con and the ex-volunteer moved to Gainesville.
At the time that Tiffany disappeared, He was actually helping construct an apartment complex that was on Tiffany Sessions' walk every day. First thing I wanted to do was try to interview Paul Rolls myself.
So Kevin Allen takes a 5-hour road trip to the Miami prison where Rolls is doing time. He's got only one thing on his mind: bringing Tiffany home once and for all.
Like most homicide detectives, we think we can convince anyone to tell us what happened.
But when Allen gets to the lockup, Rolls is in the prison hospital. It looks like he's come for nothing. The inmate lies in a coma, his body almost devoured by lung cancer.
Paul? I was kind of hoping he'd wake up, so I was kind of standing over him, calling his name very loudly. The nurse actually came by and said, he's probably never going to wake up.
Hours go by. Allen finally calls it a night, but doesn't give up trying to get at the truth.
My hope was that if he did wake up and had a couple moments of consciousness before he died, that he'd see the picture of Tiffany Sessions. His conscience would get the better of him and he'd say, yes, I did it, and this is where she is.
But those answers never come.
Yeah, short outfit for college.
24 years and 4 days after Tiffany Sessions vanished without a trace, the number one suspect, Paul Rolls, dies in his sleep. The chances of tying him to Tiffany's death now are slim to none.
Kevin had sent me an email and said, Paul Rolls has died. And I remember immediately a visceral reaction to that. And I sent back, crap, crap, crap! Get the belongings out of his cell. This is our last chance.
Detective Allen comes back to Gainesville with everything Rolls left behind. It's not much, just a small box filled with a squirrely collection of random things.
He was a real OCD type person. He was very detail-oriented. So his personal records are just full of memoirs, letters, and journals. One of the first things I saw was a little address book.
Inside, page after page filled with details about Rolls' victims. There are names, dates, and phone numbers. There's also a drawing of a Florida license plate with "1 Linda" on it. Looks like Rolls was paying tribute to his first victim, Linda Fida. They find several references to Foster and a mention of the teenager he abducted and raped. But that's not what stops Allen dead in his tracks.
2989.
There was the date 2989 with a number 2. And if there was any date that was permanently etched in my memory, it was February the 9th, 1989. That was the date that Tiffany Sessions was abducted. And the number 2 I knew from researching Paul Rolls. Chronologically, Linda Fida was his first victim. Tiffany Sessions would have been his second victim.
We got him. Here, let me look at that.
There it is, in black and white. The closest thing to a confession Allen will ever get from a dead man.
I know that Paul Rolls was a stalker and a planner. I believe that Paul Rolls saw Tiffany Sessions when she was on her nightly walk, when he was working, putting up the scaffolding on her route that she took every day. I think Paul Rolls knew that she sometimes walked by herself, so I think he just waited, like he waited for his first victim, until there was an opportunity to take her in a secluded area when there were no witnesses.
If you had asked me a year and a half ago, do you think you're going to ever find out what happened? I'd have probably told you I was going to keep trying, but the truth is, I thought we were pretty much done. And I was wrong, and thank God I was.
Finally, we have an answer of who did it. He's going to pay a price for what he's done, And I don't want to be anywhere close by when he's knocking at the pearly gates. I'm just sorry that we weren't able to get more information from him before he passed away.
But when Rolls died, he took the secret of where Tiffany is with him.
Okay,
I just put myself in the parents' place, you know, having a 20-year-old college student going away to college, and you get a call one day and she didn't come home, and then 25 years later, she's still not home.
The police are meant to protect us from the worst of society. We trust them to uphold the law and keep us safe. But what happens when the protector becomes the predator?
He's performing as the protector of the public. On the other hand, he's actually a really dark monster.
Is that how you obtain this material?
And the people who are meant to keep us safe become dangerous.
I'm arrested on suspicion of attempted murder.
Even though you're a police officer, people will feel that they're above the law.
But how would you catch a criminal who thinks like a cop?
He's got a head start on the investigation team.
He's panicking at this point, and he's now running.
I've enlisted the help of 3 experts. 2 senior officers that have put hundreds of offenders behind bars.
Most people, they know when their back's against the wall and they're going to get convicted for something.
The horror, he's one of us.
And a leading psychologist who can analyse the criminal mind.
Underlying that anger is the need to dominate, is the need to control.
In this series, I'll discover cops who put themselves on the wrong side of the law.
He's like a Jekyll and Hyde character.
Abuse their power and commit horrific crimes.
We should never have had that badge, ever.
We expect our police to behave with honesty and integrity. They're the ones we call on in a crisis. So what happens when a trusted police officer turns to lying and cheating, and ultimately, to murder? On the 9th of May 2020, in the small town of West Parley just outside Bournemouth, CCTV cameras at a local pub capture a man stumbling across the car park.
A 999 call comes in from a member of the public. They've come across a man who's very, very distressed, crying, shouting, with what appears like stab wounds on his arms.
He said he's been stabbed. We think there might be another casualty, and my husband's gone to have a look. We think there's another person who's black and blue, apparently. We don't think she's with us.
Police and paramedic crews race to the scene.
When the officers turn up, it's a really confusing scene. They can see that the man who is shouting and distressed is somebody they know and they work with in force. They recognise him to be Timothy Bremer, a serving police officer. They can see behind him a short distance a vehicle with a female body slumped half in, half out of the car.
She's hanging out and she doesn't look like she's breathing.
This sunny Saturday afternoon has taken a sinister turn.
What makes this even more stressful and traumatic is the paramedics, when they turn up and start giving the person first aid, they recognise her as a colleague they work with in emergency services. Is a nurse called Claire Parry.
Claire is in a critical condition. As paramedics try to stabilise her, PC Timothy Bremer's stab wounds are treated.
1, 2, 3.
Central, Tim.
He starts confessing to everything that's happened leading up to this point.
I've written down what you said to me, what's been said, all right? When we first got here, when I first saw you outside,
You were asked by the paramedics what was happening. You said wounds were caused by a penknife in my car. I've had it for years, don't remember what happened. Just felt it go in, I think, 3 times.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. That's fine. We'll get you down to the hospital so we can get you all checked out, and then we can do it from there, all right?
Who stabbed PC Bremer? What happened to Claire Parry? And how did the police figure out what happened in that car park? To help me get to grips with this case, I'm speaking to former Detective Chief Superintendent Fiona Mallon.
The paramedics are doing everything they can to keep Claire alive. She gets taken to the Bournemouth General Hospital and they manage to restart her heart.
Claire is alive, but barely. The only one with any answers to what went on is Bremer. But his version of events only raises more questions. What did they know?
At this point in time, Bremer's really confused and he's changing his story every minute or so. One minute he's saying that Claire stabbed him with a penknife, then he's saying he might have done it himself. Now, you can look at this in 2 ways. Either Bremer's in shock, he can't work out what to say, or actually he's thinking now that it's time to save himself and he needs to start blaming Claire for attacking him and he was defending himself.
Who thinks like that?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Get him in there.
Get him in there.
We'll leave the questioning to you guys. We'll just medically look at it and go through it. Yeah.
As Claire clings to life, Bremer's police colleagues launch an urgent investigation.
We don't know the set of circumstances that has led up to what's happened between Timothy and Claire. All we know is that as an end result, Claire has been assaulted. What are these 2 people doing in this situation on a Saturday afternoon in a pub car park?
I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
On the 9th of May 2020, PC Timothy Bremer was found sitting in a pub car park with stab wounds to his arm. Behind him, nurse Claire Parry was found slumped in a car, barely alive. But is Bremer a victim or the attacker? So far, his version of events is the only thing police have got to go on.
And I've written down what you said to me, what's been said, all right?
It soon becomes clear Bremer and Claire were not strangers to one another.
I was having an affair with her. She got me to meet her here. Female arrived after me and jumped in my car. She was so angry. She was going to tell my wife we were having an affair for years. I think she told my wife I was going to drive off and kill myself.
Bremer's story is of a secret affair gone horrendously wrong. A jealous rage, threats of suicide, and his lover, Claire, left for dead. But who is Timothy Bremer? And how did this police officer end up on the wrong side of the law? What can you tell me about Timothy Bremer?
Bremer was 41 years old, serving with Dorset Police, married, and they had, on outward appearances, a normal, healthy relationship. He was well thought of in the force, did a number of roles.
What would Bremer's day-to-day be like as a police officer?
He moved from frontline duties into road traffic policing, obviously dealing with road traffic accidents, anything to do with sort of vehicle crime. And then he took on a specialist course called Family Liaison, which is a really sensitive role where you work with bereaved families or those who've lost people through homicides or other sort of road traffic accidents. He then got an accident, an altercation with a motorist one day, and it affected him quite badly in that he felt that he couldn't do his job and he was moved onto the National Police Air Service.
As a police officer and around his colleagues, how was he seen?
He was actually, in the early part of his career, regarded as a bit of a hero. Him and a colleague managed to save a family from a burning building and their 3 cats. Saved them all, saved their lives, phenomenal bravery. But from that, he got enormous respect from his colleagues and management alike. And they thought he was a fantastic officer.
So how does this decorated police officer, a pillar of the community, end up being questioned by his colleagues, whilst his lover's life is hanging in the balance? To help me get to the truth, I need to speak to someone in the know. I'm just on my way to Dorset to meet somebody who's a journalist who knows a lot about this case and hopefully can fill in exactly what happened. Local journalist Ben Williots remembers covering this story.
Bremer was having an affair with Claire Perry. She was married herself and was nursed for quite a number of years and met Bremer in 2005. They then had a relationship which Bremer himself described as sexually flirtatious and infrequent until 2010, 2011, where it became more frequent and very sexually orientated, where they continued on and off for 10 years.
Claire knew he was married. Was he leading Claire down the path of, I will leave my wife for you?
Initially, she didn't know he was married. And then when she found out, I think that was certainly an aspect of it, that they were going to, leave their husbands and wives and run off into the sunset, so to speak.
Did either of their partners become aware that they were having an affair?
Claire's husband had his suspicions. He found emails from Claire to Bremer. He also found a rugby top under her bed, which didn't belong to him, which is assumed that was Bremer's, and also bank statements from their joint account for travel lodges, and also a phone bill which had lots of calls and messages to the same number. So that really raised his suspicions.
Both Claire and Bremer were married, with young families. Getting the news she was in hospital fighting for her life, whilst he was in custody, accused of attempted murder, would have come as a huge shock to their partners and families. Didn't any of Bremer's police colleagues know about the double life he was living?
There was also, in the background, murmurings and whispers around him being a bit of a charmer, flirt a lot with women, would look for women to talk to and sort of be a bit sexual in terms of flirtation. On one level, he's this really respected officer who saved people's lives. On another, he's a womanizer.
Womanizer or not, that doesn't explain what happened in the car park that day, or prove who was responsible. The investigators need evidence. To help me understand the challenge they faced, I'm speaking to ex-Met Detective Chief Inspector Howard Groves. When it comes to Bremer, because he has injuries, do you question them there and then about what's gone on?
The officers would want to establish what happened, so they would ask him basic questions. It wouldn't be a full-blown interview for obvious reasons, but they'd want to ask him how, first, he received those injuries. Did he know who the person in the vehicle was? Whether the vehicle belonged to him. They would just want to establish the basic facts at the time. And those officers had body cameras on them. Initially, he said that he had been stabbed, so the officer obviously had to establish whether those facts were true.
The challenge for the investigators is to establish exactly what happened inside that car that left Claire with such terrible injuries. So far, the only person talking is Bremer.
Bremer's account of events is that he had met Claire in the car park. They were both in his vehicle. She was telling him that she was going to tell his wife about the affair that they were having. He obviously was not happy with that and wanted to do it himself. Claire then grabs his phone from him and sends a text to Bremer's wife, basically saying, I'm cheating. And as a result of that, he tried to get her out of the vehicle. She didn't want to do that, and he was trying to push her out. And that's when the injuries that she received happened.
Do they hold him responsible straight away for what's happened to Claire?
The first thing the officers would be thinking about is whether or not the account that he provided on the basic information, whether that fits what they actually come across. Bearing in mind, Claire was actually unconscious. They couldn't ask her any questions.
She was so angry. She was going to tell my wife we were having an affair for years. She was going through my phone. I don't remember what happened. The wounds were caused by a penknife in my car.
Bremer is adamant that Claire was injured as he was trying to push her out of the passenger seat of his car. But that doesn't explain the wounds on his arm. So how did Bremer end up getting stabbed?
So he had his own penknife, which he kept in his car. And he stabbed himself. He claimed he was trying to get Claire's attention to stop her texting Bremer's wife. However, he went and sat at the front of the car park. He claimed that he was stabbed by Claire.
Let me just get this straight. So he's saying that he wanted to get Claire's attention away from texting his wife to let his wife know that he was cheating on her, so he stabbed himself and then went to the front of the road and told people that she'd stabbed him.
Yeah, absolutely, which again is a theme of his life. He's just lying all the way through.
I can't get my head around this. He's seen on the police body cameras saying he didn't know how he got the stab wounds. Then he's saying that Claire stabbed him. And then he did them to himself. Which is it?
Bremer's changing his story every minute or so. When I've watched the video footage of Bremer in the back of the ambulance, and also the walking about beforehand, the crying, the hand moving and everything else, he's trapped. He's got his colleagues there who recognise him. For me, this is a classic piece of theatre where he's trying to make himself look innocent. He's walking around sobbing and crying. I think he just looks pathetic.
Bremer is a well-trained copper and a serial liar. So is he just using his skill and experience to put on a performance? Because if he is, it's pretty convincing. But would Bremer's police colleagues believe what he's telling them? Is there any evidence to prove it? Or is it just another one of his lies?
The account provided by Bremer that he was just trying to push her out of the vehicle, the two don't marry up. Your initial thoughts to that explanation would be, that's definitely not the circumstances, but you, as a police officer, you know that there are going to be medical opportunities for you to be able to prove that those injuries couldn't have been caused by somebody that's pushing someone out.
Rather than a tragic accident, there's a far darker explanation.
He was annoyed that Claire had used his phone to text his wife, and I think in a fit of pique, he decided that he was going to attack her because she was somebody who was now going to have an impact on his relationship with his wife. He would have probably not been able to see his son. So there's a lot going on in his head at the time of that attack.
The fact that Bremer is a police officer, when they arrive at the scene, does that change anything, the way they treat him?
No, him being a police officer wouldn't really be an issue for the police officers. As far as they were concerned, here is somebody who has stab wounds or injuries to his hand. We know that there's a female in a car who's unconscious, so all they want to do is establish the facts.
What's happened? Who's injured? How's it happened?
Yes, once they identified Claire's details, it was established that she had a relationship with Bremer for at least 11 years. So there would be an awful lot of information that those officers would want to establish, either from him, his colleagues, his wife. Did his wife know about that relationship? Did any of his colleagues know about it?
The fast-paced investigation reaches an inevitable conclusion, that whatever happened to Claire in the car, Bremer was responsible, either directly or indirectly.
She said she's going to get arrested. At the moment, I'm arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. You don't have to say anything to me. I'm just mentioning my question. Somebody there at Ryan Court. Anything you do say may be given as evidence, okay?
I'm so sorry.
What they don't know is why Claire chose that moment to confront Bremer and expose their affair to his wife. She had known he had a wife for over a decade, so why now?
There was rumours these gathered pace, and Claire Parry started to get suspicious. She thought she was the other woman, but actually there were many, many more.
May 2020, and Police Constable Timothy Bremer of Dorset Police has been arrested for the attempted murder of his lover, Claire Parry. Their decade-long affair had ended up with a brutal and violent attack, leaving Claire fighting for her life. But as Bremer's police colleagues dig into his personal life, they discover a tipping point in the pair's relationship.
So Bremer and Claire had been having an on-off relationship for sort of 10, 11 years. And in the latter part, Claire had become suspicious that she was one of many women and that he was cheating on her as well as his wife, in her mind. So she sets up a fake Facebook account and she starts to do her own inquiry around what women Bremer's been in touch with, who he's going out with, what photos are available. And she comes to the conclusion he's a serial womanizer and she feels cheated.
So Claire wasn't the only woman Bremer was seeing. He was even cheating on his mistress with multiple women. How did Claire react when she found out that she wasn't the only one?
This is where Claire became incredibly angry, and she felt that she'd been cheated and lied to and deceived. And all the time, I think she was given false promises by Bremer saying, you know, I love you, I can't leave, I love you, I've got a family or whatever. So she stayed, but also during this time, her own marriage broke up, which was really sad. So she's now left with the realisation that the man she'd been with and spending time with was actually cheating on her. What did she have left? And then she became angry, and she wanted to get her own back. She wanted to destroy Bremer's home life too.
What did she do?
She contacted Bremer. Bremer's with his family in the garden, and he makes an excuse to his wife that he's going to go out and get some food for the barbecue. But actually, he's arranged to meet with Claire. I think Bremer still thinks he can get his own way, he can influence her. Everything's all right, don't worry, you know, you're the one for me. But Claire's not having it. And Claire sends a text to his wife about cheating, at which point the tension between them escalates, and then Bremer attacks Claire.
Bremer is a pathological liar. He's been caught out, and he doesn't like it.
For years, he's managed a double life. He's been with his wife, who didn't suspect, and his family, and playing their respected police officer. So he's playing this big sort of chessboard, and everything's nice and controlled, and suddenly he's going to come crashing down because Claire's had enough, and she wants to expose him to his wife and ruin his marriage.
Bremer flipped and brutally attacked Claire, causing her to lose consciousness, before lying about what happened to the witnesses at the scene, the police and the paramedics.
When he leaves the car and he starts talking about it, he delays getting any medical help to her. So in those vital minutes when he's flailing about, talking about himself, actually, they could have had immediate care to Claire.
Tragically, Claire never regains consciousness and dies the following day. In your mind, did you think he actually intended to kill her?
I think he did, yeah.
Bremer was a police officer, someone trusted and respected. And yet he was capable of doing something so terrible to someone he said he loved. Just what was going on in his mind? To help me understand, I'm speaking to chartered psychologist Serena Simmons.
I think ultimately for me, when you look at Bremer's presentation, what I see is someone who cannot regulate his emotions and has no control over his sense of self. And how he exhibits that is in his inability to stay faithful to his partner and his inability to monitor and regulate his own emotions. He's a compulsive liar. He's used to having multiple affairs and being with multiple women. So you imagine what that's like in reality. You'll have to tell a lot of stories to a lot of different people and be able to keep the narrative going with kind of several different people at the same time. It takes a lot of effort. So any sign of that house of cards coming down is going to feel even more threatening.
For any rational person, would be like, I couldn't deal with the stress of it all. Whereas for him, he probably enjoyed the control of all that, having all these puppets at the end of the strings.
There's obviously something about this lifestyle that he got a lot out of. I think it served him and it served a purpose for him. But obviously it became more complicated when there was the threat to this all being taken away from him and something that was happening out of his control, and he wanted to regain that control back.
It was only a matter of time before all Bremer's deception caught up with him. But no one could have anticipated it catching up in such a vicious and tragic way. How was Bremer seen by his peers, work colleagues?
The fact that he was a serial adulterer was very well known to people that worked alongside him. In actual fact, it was so well known that people chose to call him various different nicknames. For example, Mr. Smooth. These are very telling signs that people knew exactly what his character was really like.
I mean, it does what it says on the tin. It's obvious the kind of person he is.
Reputation is one thing, but if the investigators were going to prove that Bremer was lying, they need hard evidence.
A lot of analysis would be done in the vehicle. It would have been fingerprinted. Even though we know that both of them were in there, they would have considered that. They would have looked at the seat belts. They would look at what position somebody would have to be to receive the injuries. He said he was almost on top of her as he was trying to get her out.
And as they dig deeper, the evidence against Bremer begins to mount.
The mobile phones of both parties would be significant because it would have shown earlier on in the day when Bremer had finished work. He actually rang Claire in the early hours of the morning. There's a conversation between them. Later on, Claire rings him and says, I want to have a chat with you. They agree where they're going to meet, so that all that timeline would be relevant to the investigation. We know from the autopsy, it showed that she had actually received a significant blow to her mouth, which caused abrasions and lacerations inside her mouth. A small bone in her neck was also broken. She had at least 11 bruises to her right upper arm. She had a further 10 bruises and abrasions on her left arm, and she had significant bruising in the area of her chest. When you think about all of those injuries, it meant that significant force was used against her.
Obviously, it sounds like he's strangled her or he's choked her.
Yes.
But with all the other bruises and injuries, and in that such a small space in a car, it sounds like he's completely lost it.
And we know that Claire also put up a fight as well. But he obviously had her in a restrained hold for long enough for her to be unconscious. She fought as hard as she could, but bearing in mind he is a police officer, he would know how to restrain someone, and he would know what amount of force to use.
So how long do we think he probably strangled her for?
Between 10 to 30 seconds of continual pressure.
The fact that Bremer choked Claire for that long and caused so many injuries to her body tells me all I need to know about this cop. But evidence of what happened after the attack would prove just as important.
The most telling bit of evidence that they had was based on a text message that was sent from Bremer's phone to his wife. It was Claire who sent that message at 15:02 to his wife. And we know that 3 minutes after that, he then tries to wipe the data from his phone. So minutes after the attack, Bremer is trying to reset his mobile phone.
In the midst of everything, in all that emotional distress, Bremer still thought to reset his phone.
The mere fact that he's doing a factory reset, it shows that there's intent on his part to hide something from the investigators. So even though he's distressed about it, as you can see from the footage, he still has the mindset to try and minimize any evidence that the police officers would subsequently be looking to find.
This is truly despicable. Someone who is supposed to be trustworthy and honest is not only telling lie after lie, but he's actively trying to destroy evidence and cover his tracks. Does he really think he's going to get away with murder?
So Bremer would have known. He's an experienced police officer. He knows what he's doing. He will know that the offences that the police are going to look at him for, the assault, he knows that he's got to show some sort of loss of control, diminished responsibility, confused state to help him get out of this situation. And that's what it feels like he's doing.
It's cold and calculating, and gives a glimpse of the real Timothy Bremer. But how did his true nature go under the radar with his colleagues in the police? Especially when some of those women he was cheating with were fellow officers themselves.
Dorset is a relatively small force, 1,500 people, very tight-knit, close. Everyone would have known each other's business. Everyone would have been talking. But if you juxtapose that against the fact that he's a really respected officer who has been recognised for bravery and for saving lives, perhaps people thought, well, if he's having affairs, that's down to him, it's his private life. He's not causing anyone harm as far as they could see. And he's a really well thought of officer. So perhaps that in itself was enough just to let it go.
But it wasn't causing anyone harm until Bremer did what he did to Claire.
There was no significant red flags about his ability to be a professional police officer, but there were comments raised about him being a womanizer from an early stage of his career. So one could say, was any action taken? Did any officer make any complaints against him? Put it bluntly, it doesn't show a good character if someone is having extramarital affairs, but it's not a sackable offense.
He is a police officer, we have to remember that. But he's also a very, very good liar, a manipulator. Is that someone you want to have in the force?
No, of course not. You don't want dishonest people. You want people with integrity and ethics and people who know the difference between right and wrong. He was a serial liar. He lived in a fantasy world. He thought it was irresistible to women. And he thought that he could have any woman he wanted. And it didn't matter, he wouldn't be found out.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
He was very clever in how he managed his time and how he manipulated others around him. So not only was he lying to his wife and to Claire, but also he was manipulating and lying to sort of supervising officers around him so that he could work his shifts, so that he'd go and see the women he wanted to see. So he was very clever in how he, again, was puppeteering all the time and controlling everybody.
I just can't get Bremer's wife out of my mind. She's just found out her hero husband has been cheating on her for 10 years. It's likely his police colleagues knew, but said nothing. And now he's in custody, and his lover is dead.
I'm sure there are many of those colleagues who will be asking themselves the question, why didn't we say something about it? Why didn't we approach him and say, everybody knows what you're doing, maybe you want to stop? Or even to the women he was having those relationships with, who were police officers, really? We now know that Claire didn't have any idea about it. She was able to hide and live this double life.
This horrific attack was carried out by a police officer. Someone who is supposed to protect people and keep them safe, not lie and deceive, and ultimately to kill. And when the chips were down, he never thought about Claire, only what he needed to do to protect himself.
In that moment, what's fascinating is that he steps into victim mode. So instead of doing what would be the right thing in that situation, aside from not having done it in the first place, but to call an ambulance to get help for her, no, he switches into victim. Poor me, it's all about him and poor him. And I think that's just very illustrative of the fact that he slipped into that little boy, that very insecure little boy who wants attention and needs to have his needs met first. It's taking complete attention off the person that really is requiring that at that time.
She was going through my phone. I don't remember what happened.
That's quite cold, isn't it? Straight away you're thinking about, right, how do I protect myself in this situation?
Yeah, he is. But this is typical of the person who's managed so many people's lives and controlled them and done it clinically and clearly for a number of years.
PC Timothy Bremer had admitted on arrest on the 9th of May 2020 that there was a struggle in his car that led to the death of nurse Claire Parry.
Can you remember what the response was like from the community when they heard a local police officer had done this?
Yeah, just shock, I think, especially for a respected officer. Nobody knew what he was like outside of his police work. Nobody knew his dealings with women, so they thought he was quite a well-respected man. I'm just really surprised and disappointed as well in the force and in Bremer himself.
Bremer met with Claire in this pub car park in Dorset. While they were in his car, she used his phone to text his wife, revealing their affair. He claimed she was then accidentally injured in a kerfuffle as he tried to push her out of the car so he could drive away.
Despite Bremer's claims it was an accident, investigators have uncovered evidence that Claire was deliberately killed. But without irrefutable proof or eyewitnesses, there's still some doubt as to exactly what happened.
Why couldn't we see on CCTV what happened in that car?
So where they parked, where we're stood now, CCTV doesn't cover this area. So the only things we can see is the two of them driving in from the entrance, and then 20 minutes later, Bremer walking to the front and sitting down on the pavement just outside.
But then that makes me think, is Bremer using his police knowledge to know that this area of the car park isn't on CCTV?
Whether is that calculated, I don't know, but he certainly would know that there'll be areas where CCTV doesn't cover.
And were there other ways in which Bremer used the skills he'd learned as a cop to cover his tracks?
He tries to wipe his phone at an early stage, the method that he's used to restrain her. And he was thinking ahead of the game. You know, he gets out of the vehicle, he then tries to give the impression that he's been attacked. So he's giving a story, although when you think about it long term, that story wouldn't hold for too long. It's his police knowledge, it's his police experience. He knows he's going to be asked questions, so he has to come up with an answer.
Despite his deception and destruction of crucial evidence, Bremer is arrested and charged with Claire's murder. But at his pre-trial hearing, the police officer pleads not guilty.
So Bremer pleaded guilty to manslaughter. He admitted killing Claire Parry, but denied meaning to. His story was always that he was trying to get her out of the car and accidentally killed her in the kerfuffle. Dorset Police and the CPS, working together, decided there was enough evidence to try him for murder, which he denied, so that was when the trial came in.
Despite admitting killing Claire, Bremer made the story that it was unintentional. I just don't buy it, and neither did the police or the CPS. Bremer appeared at Salisbury Crown Court in October 2020, facing a murder charge. Local journalist Ben reported on it.
It was during COVID, so we weren't able to actually be in court in person, so I had to watch it via live link, which made it difficult because we couldn't see Bremer's reactions to other witnesses giving their statements.
Did he say anything in court?
So in his defence, Bremer actually gave evidence in court, and he came across as very eccentric, I thought. He described his affair with Claire as a bubble of niceness. He said when he was with Claire, he was suspended in the best state of himself, and he said his relationship with her was eccentric personality with the images you see of him. And actually, when I saw his custody photo, where he looks really rugged, it really did take me back at how different he was in court. He claimed that he didn't mean to kill her, and he was trying to get her out of his car so he can go off and kill himself. The prosecution put it to him that, as a trained police officer in the road traffic unit as well, used to dealing with serious incidents, he would have known what it would take to actually kill someone by strangling them in the crook of his arm.
This guy has proven himself to be a serial liar and a cheat. Why would anyone believe him now?
My reading is that he's cold, he knows what he is doing, and he is playing the audience, and he's playing to the people who know him at work. He's hoping they'll have pity on him, they'll like him, they'll side with him, and he's doing everything he can to encourage their favour.
Shockingly, the tactic works.
Bremer had previously admitted manslaughter, and after less than 3 hours, the jury at Salisbury Crown Court agreed he was not guilty of murder.
The jury would have had to be sure, beyond reasonable doubt, that he did mean to kill her. The CCTV and the horns in, you can't see what happened in the car, so you've only got their version of events. But he was then sentenced on the basis that he lost control, which is a partial defence to murder. So the judge said there was the qualifying trigger, which was the message sent to his wife, and he said that message should have come from Tim. So a man of a similar build and age would have also lost control, and in losing control, took Claire by the neck and killed her.
Not guilty after all of that. So what happens is then he accepts the manslaughter charge, and he gets convicted and sentenced for 10.5 years, which is later appealed as being too lenient, and he ends up getting 13.5 years imprisonment.
It must have been a bitter blow for the investigators that had so painstakingly built the case against Bremer. But for Claire's family, who had been hoping to see justice done, it must have been devastating.
Could you just explain the difference between manslaughter and murder?
Well, murder is premeditated. You've planned it. You set out to kill someone, and you take those necessary steps. Manslaughter, you could say it's an accident. Or I intended to assault them, but I didn't intend to kill them.
But he had a chance to stop, and he didn't. So in that point, when he didn't stop, doesn't that become murder then?
The nuances of murder and manslaughter are apparent, but during the trial, The judge actually made comment and said that he felt that the defense had actually met the standards for loss of control, and therefore manslaughter was the appropriate conviction.
It just doesn't seem enough. If that was my daughter at the back of that car that he killed, 13 and a half years doesn't seem nowhere near enough.
As an ex-police officer, I can understand the sentencing guidelines and why they arrived at that decision. As a father, I don't think that 13 and a half years is sufficient. You have to take into account the time that he had already served when he was on remand. He's going to get at least a third of that sentence knocked off again. So within 8 years, he will be a free man again to go out and build relationships with other people. Claire's family will still be grieving over her loss. So sometimes you can say that justice doesn't seem to be fair.
PC Timothy Bremer violently attacked and ultimately killed Claire because she exposed him for who he really was.
Do you think Bremer would be thinking to himself, I just got away with murder?
The fact is he did get away with it, didn't he? He's got 13 and a half years. His marriage is over, and obviously his family's torn apart.
He'll still be able to live his life, won't he? He'll still have a life.
Yes. Claire hasn't, no.
There wasn't just one victim here. Although they'd separated, Claire had a husband, a family, and friends. I can't imagine what they must have been through.
Bremer has lost everything. He's lost his freedom, he's lost his career, he's lost having time to be with his family, his children and his loved ones. Really, as a result of what he's done, he's literally lost everything.
Do you think there was any remorse from Bremer?
I think he may have felt remorse that she had gone. He'd been with her for 11 years. I think more the remorse would be centred around the fact that this lifestyle, this house of cards that he had very carefully built over so many years had now fallen. Because he liked the lifestyle that he had. I think he liked the character that he could portray. And so any remorse, any true remorse, would really come from losing everything, not just having killed Claire. Having worked in institutions myself and dealt with people who have committed murder, it's not unusual for people who've committed such an act to have to work through their own emotions around what they've done. Believe it or not, some people find it also quite traumatic that they've done these things, and so they have to think about and process this awful thing that they've done. I think there are signs here with Bremer that he might have to do some of that psychological work himself.
What's your opinion of Bremer?
I think he's despicable. He's everything I hate in a person, in that he's a liar, he's a cheater, he's weak, he's narcissistic, and he's looking after himself the whole time. And to then put a uniform on and say he's about public service is an insult to policing and to everybody he loves around him or who loves him.
As a cop, Bremer was in a position of trust and responsibility, and he abused that. He lied, he cheated and manipulated people, and when that sense of control was lost, he turned to murder. In my opinion, he was never fit to wear that uniform.